You're going out of sync. It's like
No,
the picture of you is set it,
timeline
and then
shifting as we speak.
yeah.
Okay, let me record. I think you're already recording. Let me just.
Just started, yeah.
Okay, welcome everyone. We've got Abby Wynn back with us. Such a delight from across the pond over in Ireland. Beautifully talented, intuitive healer. And I think she will just give us a little bio again for those that don't know Abby. Most of you do, but some of you are new. So we're just talking all things, current energies, what's going on in the world, what's going on in Ireland, South Africa, and where we are. So, Abby, just give us a quick intro for those that don't know you.
Well, I've been doing shamanism, Reiki, and psychotherapy in private practice for about 14 years. So I blend it all together as shamanic psychotherapy. I've written quite a few books and yeah, doing a lot of energy work, working on healing, which is stripping away all the parts of you that are not you. And I'm seeing a lot of people putting on parts that are not really them and thinking that they are. So,
Mm.
just for my viewers, I want to introduce you, Anina, because you have such a lot to offer. You're much more than someone who interviews other people. You have a great mind. How many
Mm.
times have you been kicked off TikTok now? 3 times.
Well, twice in 6 weeks, and once on
Is that a
YouTube.
record?
I don't know. And once from YouTube, and I'm on a 90-day shadow ban on Instagram. So, but we keep sharing the truth. And, some of these platforms are good in sort of getting the sort of more unawakened masses to think critically. I come from a marketing background, actually originally creative background. I've got a degree in fine art and jewelry design, and then kind of ventured halfway into my career into the business world and established myself in marketing, which I never thought I actually was interested in. Um, so I was fortunate in that I always tell people I kind of got my MBA on the job for the boss that I was working on for 25 years ago in all aspects of business, but specifically marketing. I also spent, doing that some time in human resources and merchandise planning but I've always had a real interest in psychology, law, funny enough, and then the creative side. So I'm kind of that very diverse kind of thinker, left and right brain. I have that ability to kind of bridge the two. But the psychology of marketing and trying to get into the consumer's head has always been interesting to me. But, of course, like many of us really woke up in a big way 3, 4 years ago when all this madness started around the world. And I kind of just eventually had to put away from what I was doing in the marketing space in the 3D arena altogether because I just completely lost interest in it. I went from super ambitious, driven to succeed, top of my game in that 3D arena, which is luxury brand marketing, to completely just focused on seeking the truth and educating people on what's really going on around the world, and of course working on my own spiritual growth and awakening as well in the process, and just wanting to help others. And I think that the psychology of marketing is actually serving me now in an interesting
Mm.
way because I'm committed to kind of just get through to people, that cognitive dissonance, that the MK Ultra that we see so prevalent around the globe, just getting through to specific pockets of people at different points of their awakening to kind of know how to speak to them, how to reach them in a space where they are to get them to start questioning the narrative and ask questions and just think differently. So it's interesting how it came kind of full circle. Who knows where this will all go? I started the channel only 1 year ago. The YouTube channel that my 1 year anniversary is officially this month.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And I never thought, I would start a YouTube channel, to be honest. It was horrifying for me to even consider. But, at some point you've got to like pick up the baton and say, you know what, I'll join this race in whatever I have to offer. If I have a voice, I will use it. If I have a platform, I will use it. If I have a talent or a skill or a passion, I'll pull all those together and actually use it to contribute to this incredible awakening that we see around the world, and shifting humanity and the planet into the golden age. And that's my passion and my commitment, so to speak, in a nutshell.
I find that so interesting, because when you think about the amount of money that they've spent on marketing campaigns and how they've snuck these things in the background, and suddenly when it shows up, you kind of fall into it because you're the walking, sleeping people. My background is in science. I have a master's degree in science. I've worked in a laboratory, and I saw what goes on with scientific research, which for me was really interesting. I was with an eminent scientist, now nothing to do with pharmaceuticals, it's pure biology. But again, what I learned was that there's no such thing as science for science sake. You can't spend time discovering stuff for the joy of learning how things work. It has to always be where the money is. And I saw this eminent scientist, who I admired greatly at the time, throw out half of his sample because they didn't suit his narrative.
Wow.
Just ignore this and let's focus on this. And I thought,
It's just another business at the end of the day, isn't it?
So when I said to my family, I know how science works and I know they've skewed the results and I know that there's something wrong here. It's like, no, listen to the experts, hand your soul over to the doctors. And, so it was very interesting, the level of cognitive dissonance that is still rampant. And I believe it comes ultimately from a fear of taking responsibility for your own life. Because if you hand responsibility to someone else, then if something goes wrong, it's their fault and not your own.
And they'll come and fix it. They'll come and save you, right? It's a savior mentality that we've been indoctrinated into as a civilization for thousands of years.
Well, I haven't seen anybody saving anybody, to be honest. What's interesting, actually, Anina, is I've decided to record audiobook of a book of mine that I haven't done an audiobook for, and it's called Heal Your Inner Wounds. And I've just done inner child, inner teenager, and the young wounded adult. I've just done all three of those. And really, when you think about it, stepping into the responsible adult and becoming responsible and aware of the choices and the consequences of your choices, instead of waiting for government handouts or having this whole expectation that you're entitled to everything and people should just serve you just because you exist. Exactly. Get in line, take whatever medicine we give you, and
it's
then
like a spoiled child, isn't it? I mean, that's exactly what a spoiled child does.
That's exactly it. Exactly it. So we bring more skills and knowledge to the table than we would anticipate. I mean, I've gone into teaching, I've done instructional design work. And so to explain difficult spiritual concepts for me is something that I know how to do because of the science, because you've got your marketing. You mentioned MK Ultra with some of my people. I don't really talk about this, but it's a way, I think, out of MK Ultra came NLP. Would that be correct, do you think? Neuro-linguistic programming, which is used in marketing greatly. It's used in negotiations, it's used in contracting, and it's also used in therapy to kind of get a hold of your thoughts and turn them around and stop attacking yourself with them. So there are quite good coaches out there who use NLP, but it's not my preferred method. So
yeah, that's interesting. When I realized what was really going on, not realize, I mean, I knew, but I guess at that stage it was just a blind pursuit of success and not realizing in what a state the world really was. But when I realized what, the it's all about psychological operations, everything around us, and marketing is no different. It's another psychological operation that you're figuring out how you can sell something to someone that they don't need in perpetuity. That's really what marketing is about. But when it really dawned on me what, the state of the world, where we are, and what went into actually the act of marketing itself, I was like, I can't be part of this anymore. But there is such a thing as, good psyops. And I was listening to Dr. Jan Halper Hayes the other day, and how they talk about, how they're actually busy with a positive psyop to try and get people out of the MK Ultra you know, so you kind of gauge when people are awakened enough to be ready for certain information, and then you drop a little, you know, a few more breadcrumbs, because, you know, if you do it at the wrong time, it's just going to blow up in your face because they won't be
Would you
ready
give
for
an
it. They'll shut
example of
down.
that? You know, as a psyop, as a psychological operation that isn't quite what they say it is, or how would you define that?
I think a psychological operation is looking at the psychology of the audience in how you deliver something. So when I say there's a positive psyop, it's actually about, you know, we can tell people what's going on around the world and that they've been lied to and that they are debt slaves or whatever it is, but they're not going to believe us. So we need to make sure psychologically they are ready for that information. So we're dropping in certain information. Then we're doing an analysis, like an algorithm, to check what is the level of awakening. Are they ready for the next piece of information? Because you can't just snap people out of their psychosis and their MK Ultra. You've got to do it in a slow and measured way. You know, so for me, that's what the positive psychological, I don't know, it's my interpretation. I might be wrong. But it's kind of assessing along the way in that operation or that sting operation or whatever you want to call it, when is the audience ready for the next step of reveal, the next reveal, the next reveal, you know, because it's, you know, it's like a child. They have to learn to crawl and then walk and then run. You can't just say, okay, you run now, and, you know,
I
you
know,
can't just
but what
put them
I've
on the
been,
bicycle and push them down the road. They're going to crash and burn. So you've got to
it's
make sure
interesting because I mean, primarily for me, right, I'm a healer and I'm coming from the heart space, and the heart obviously has been quite damaged and has closed up, and you just don't want to
yeah.
open heart and everything. But what feels like the right time now is to start to go, okay, what do I need to do for me so that I can open my heart to anybody? And so by kind of drifting out of the right or the left, or the left or the right, or what is true or what is not true, and seeing what my heart wants, seems to be the only way forward for me right now, because you can label something positive psychological operation or a negative psychological operation, but either way, you're coaxing it. To me, it's like it is the sheep thing. You're coaxing people to believe one story or another story, but they have to ultimately take responsibility for themselves. And I think the further you are away from the middle, the further they are from realizing that that's something they have to do. So I kind of just hang around in the middle, and I continue to send out that vibration, which is of truth. You know, and what
It's
I've
definitely
noticed,
your gift, for sure.
well,
So
I've become
necessary.
more authentic in that I'm sharing more of me.
Mm.
But also the fact that my youngest child is now 13 helps, because I've been staunchly protecting the children and never putting anything about them on, but they're bigger now. So I can reveal a little bit more of myself. And I came on this week and I said, I'm feeling anxiety. It was 9/11. I said, I'm not going to go into that because there's so many people going into that. And we have the facts that it did happen this way. We have the facts that it didn't happen this way. And I say, all I know is I'm feeling a whole load of anxiety. I'm feeling very ungrounded and I'm feeling overwhelmed. You know, how else is everybody else feeling? Maybe we're tapping into the collective consciousness plus the astrology. Let's just see what we can do to ground ourselves, because it's not that it's only a story. It's very important what happened, and actual people died in that.
Yeah.
Then you have the argument to say, oh, well, do you know anyone that died? Is it real? Did it really happen? I know people who died,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know? So how much of the big world do we actually control, and how much of our own world do we control, and how much of our minds do we control?
Mm.
It has to start there.
Yeah,
So that's the
definitely.
kind of the tone I send out, which is if you're getting swallowed up in fear, if you're not looking after your body, you're not looking after your emotional body, mental or spiritual body, you know, you're doing exactly what they want you to do, which is hand responsibility over to someone else. It's time to take that back.
Yeah.
So,
It's very important. I agree, to have that foundation. It's like, while there's the informational side, but while you're doing that, you have to work at peeling off the layers of, you know, the heart. It's been sort of crystal, what is the right word? It's been laying dormant with all these layers of protecting it, and it's
Yeah.
time to remove some of those layers, because ultimately, if we're not ready to, with an open heart, to move forward, it's just going to be another, I can see already a lot of people are in hate and anger and resentment, and that's not the way we're going to move forward as a civilization. We have to heal all this trauma, because even those that now are traumatizing others have been traumatized. So what are you going to do? You're just going to perpetuate the hate and the anger and the resentment? We're going to start healing and being compassionate and opening our heart to those people, and just sending out heart, love and healing to heal all these ancestral and intergenerational trauma that is perpetuating this situation on the planet.
Yeah, it feels at the moment, I mean, and when you speak as well, you vibrate this frequency of authenticity and patience, and that's the words that have come up for me quite a lot, looking at your own energy level and looking at what you're investing it in more wisely, maybe. And when you have energy, you have more patience and more tolerance for others. So you can use people's families, for example. I see the person as the soul that comes into the body, but then they have the restriction of the character, the personality, the conditioning, the wounding, the trauma, the healed wounds, the unhealed wounds, all of those things. But they still have that soul essence through them. And you can look at someone who's close family, or even, a partner, and say, I love the soul of, there's a saying in Ireland, you probably heard, I love the bones of that person. But you see, the bones are part of the physiology, which is part of the conditioning and the material. I say, I love the soul of that person. I love their soul. We have a soul connection, but right now their personality, their character isn't getting it, is going around in circles. And I'm here and I'm patient and I'm emanating out this frequency of hope, and you have potential to them. And there's a really great exercise actually I could share, which is when you're in that situation when that person just can't hear you. And that's actually happened to me this week when I haven't been able to hear somebody, and that was so unusual. And I just realized it's because the frequency isn't right for me and I can't hear them. That must be what's going on for other people, where they just can't hear. You go back to the soul level. So I like fancy. So I would pick like a fancy cafe with very fancy, in my mind, of course, really expensive. I'm sitting there with my fancy tea and all the cakes or whatever. And then I visualize that their soul comes and sits at the table with me. And so we're two souls having a conversation with fancy. They can order whatever they want. And we just talk about how we're feeling. And it's like, I love you so much. You're not able to hear me. It's not that I need you to do this thing, but I'd love for you to, heal some of your wounding, or even ask for help, or even just have a rest, or, and then just hearing. And it's not you making up the dialogue when they speak to you. It's you emptying and just being in silence. And what's beautiful about this is when you say goodbye and, you feel that love connection that you're probably missing in this reality, that love does trickle down into them. And it can soften something in them so that you might even be able to have a conversation without them exploding at you, or, so this is the fabric of the reality that we're in now, where we can work energetically to get quicker results in real life. So that might be useful
I
for
love that.
watching this to try. And it doesn't have to be a big conversation with a whole list of grievances that you have against that person. It could just be, look, I just want to tell you that even though our personalities are clashing right now, my heart loves your heart. My soul loves your soul. And I don't want to be separated from you, but, there's not much that our personalities can do right now, and it's just that feeling. And that's what lifts everybody up. It's not just I'm going to sit here and I'm sending love, because,
it's not directed
no, and
necessarily.
people don't even really do it when they think they're sending love. They just go, yeah, I'm just sending love. And they can look, it's a nothing. It's a nothing thing. There are actual ways to send energy, to send love, to send that frequency, to send thoughts, to send potential.
Mm.
You know, and then it could even take maybe 3 months. 3 months later, you're doing something, you've totally forgotten about it. You get a text, I want to talk to you. Can we meet? And then they
Mm.
order something when they're sitting with you that they had ordered when you were talking to them, and you're yourself, and they go, oh my God, here we are having this conversation for real now. You
Mm.
know?
I love that. That's such a beautiful exercise because it's so visual as well. You know, somebody told me a while back, you can actually kind of go and speak to the higher self of that person, you know, and which is
Yes.
kind of similar to what you're saying now. But I think that your exercise is a lot more visual because we forget that that's how we manifest by imagining, visualizing. It's easier to manifest if you visualize this meeting and discussion, as you see, having the tea, it makes it quite
Well, I mean,
real and
even
it was
the more
easier.
detail that you put into it, because this is what people forget. And this has always amazed me in all of my work that I've been doing. You know, here's a dream encyclopedia, and they hand it to you, and you start reading it, and then it's telling you what all the things mean. No, don't go near those, because your
Mm.
meaning of things is different to my meaning of things is different to his. You know, the whole idea of a dog bites one child and a dog is another child's best friend, and then they're adults, they dream
Mm.
of a dog. One of them is dreaming about something that's scary, and the other one is dreaming because they love, you know, it's a different thing. But that's the whole thing, isn't it? You wake up with all of these images from your dream. The images are the soul's way of talking to you without language, because the soul doesn't need language. So people who
Mm.
don't speak the same language can still fall in love. Then they don't, you
Mm.
know, and then they figure out how to communicate without words. It's that way. So when you work with images, putting them in, you're speaking to your soul. And so your soul, let's say, go back to what I was saying earlier, is connecting into the collective anxiety because there's overwhelm, there's too many things going on, there's people's fear. You can send an image back in to go, it's okay, I don't have to do this. That we're in a state of evolution, not revolution, but evolution. And we're not all at the same level because it takes, you know, we're in cycles. So I'm going to pull myself out of the heavier cycle and give them the time they need to catch up with me. And I'm just going to move on and lay down the pathway so that more people can move into the next pathway. And we'll all get there eventually. It just might not be in this lifetime. But by
Mm.
creating the detail in our visual imaginations, which we have for a reason, it
Mm.
kind of lifts us up, and that's how we can manifest, by saying, I can have more money in the bank than I think I can have this thing going on in my life, and feeding it back to yourself so that you're in alignment with it. So yeah,
Mm.
images are very powerful. That's why
Mm.
marketing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they show you images of what they believe you want to feel like if you see a beautiful couple sitting at a restaurant and opening a box with beautiful ring, they know that the woman's looking at that picture is wanting to be that woman who are being proposed to, you know, if it's a jewelry brand, for example, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, they create those visions and imagery on paper, but we can create it with our minds and manifest it into existence, not the particular situation, but the layers behind it, which is the soul intention.
It's like that experiment that they did in America, I think, where they caught 6 or 8 students' faces and put them on posters around college, and people just got used to seeing the faces. And then they ran a election, and people voted for the faces that they had seen because they were familiar. They didn't know why. Oh, I like this guy. I don't know why. It's because they'd seen him around, you know. And it's
Mm.
just making the imprints. It's bringing in, I don't know. There is a psychology to that we have to be aware of. So maybe
Mm.
even in some of your TikToks, you could teach some of these principles of marketing that might be useful for people to see. Can they see it happening so they can detach from it and go, okay, I'm not going to fall for this. It could be
Mm.
something as simple as a yogurt. You know, buy our yogurt, it has bacteria. Did you know they've done tests on the bacteria and found that out of 26 brands, and I'm pretty sure it was in South Africa, that the scientists tested, out of the 26 brands that said they had the good gut bacteria, was only in 2 of them.
Crazy. Never mind what else is in there that's harmful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then we've got
Yeah.
mind over matter, where we can say, okay, I really want to have this Coke Zero. And so I'm looking at it and going, you're not going to hurt me. You know, and you can change the vibration of the Coke just by saying, this is what I want to drink because I like the flavor. And I do this a lot, you know, so it'll be fine and it'll be fine. But if you just drink it, it's not the same. So.
I'll try that next time I eat a piece of cake.
Yeah.
I've been off sugar for about 18 months now, but you know, sometimes you're like, damn, you know, I wish I can have that piece of
Amazing.
cake.
I think
Well,
though,
when I
you
say
can
sugar,
also do,
refined sugar.
you can imagine yourself eating the cake, and then you can feel like you actually ate the cake, and then you might not need the actual cake. That's how powerful
Yeah.
our minds are.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, there's a frequency out there of cake. So I don't know what kind of cake you like. So tune into the frequency of that cake and then just download it into your body and go, I've eaten that cake. In fact, I've eaten a whole cake and I don't have an ache in me to have it now because I've done that.
I'll definitely try that. Our minds are powerful. Our minds are super powerful.
I think so. I think so. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're just starting to tap into the potential of, you know, our mind and the potential of our soul, really. All these superpowers that we never knew we had. And, you know, even now, you know, like you have a gift that you've been kind of working in for quite a while, and you have that psychic ability. But I see many people look at people like you and say, well, I just don't have it. And I say to people, you know, you can develop it. It's like a muscle.
Mm.
Start exercising it, start working on it, because I think eventually we'll all discover how psychic, how telepathic we are, you know.
And it's the second guessing. That's
Yeah,
when you start to second,
yeah.
because we're going back to dreams, right? So what they say to get the cleanest version of what you dreamed of, you know, of what it means is the very first thing that you think it means. But then we have the tendency to go over it again and go over it again and go over it again. And that's not it. It was what you thought it was, the very first thing that came up. So when you think of a person and then they text you, it really happened.
Yeah.
So if you don't believe that you have that capacity, write it down when it happens.
And when you're open to it, it will start showing itself to you. So you're like,
More and more. Yes.
I'm really feeling my intuition switching on. And then I felt like it just happened all over the place. I would think of someone, the next minute there's a text from them, and it just bombarded me like so many times per day. And it was kind of discomforting. Hey, I can do this, you know, I am doing this. And it kind
It's
of gives
really
you that
interesting.
confidence.
Even us, right? Let's talk about us for a minute. You sent me a message a few weeks ago. Let's do, you know, a video. It was a few weeks ago. So I just knew, okay, well, when the time is right, we'll come together and we'll do the show. But just imagine that if I thought, hang on, she hasn't written back to me, or you were thinking, oh, hang on, Abby hasn't replied back to me. Maybe she doesn't like me anymore. Maybe there's something going on. Then what you're doing is you're putting that frequency in between us. And then I'm going to pick that up. And I'm going to think, hang on, Anina never replied to my email. Maybe she doesn't like me anymore. Maybe she's changed. So we create that ourselves. So once we stop doing that and it's clean, then the energy flows better. So I'm wondering if a lot of people are thinking people are angry at them, and then that people's receiving that feeling, think the other one's angry at them. And then that creates an anger that didn't need to be there in the first place. So we
You're
can play
so
with
right.
this and talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so valuable. You know, often we can be a little bit paranoid, right? Because let's face it, as a civilization, we've been traumatized for many thousands of years. So rightfully so, we're
There's the
expecting a
wounded,
lion around
abandoned
every corner.
child.
Maybe it's not lions anymore, but it's people wanting to hurt us or take something from us, or you know. So we still have that kind of fear. So we've become a little paranoid. Like if somebody doesn't respond, oh, you know, maybe they just don't like me, or and then you start creating that timeline for yourself, like you say. You start making
Yeah.
it a reality, and then the other person pick up on it, and then there's this thing between you, but you've created it.
But you don't realize you've done it. And then it's again, it's the child who's afraid of being abandoned, or the teenager who just wants to fit in, who will say anything. And when I was reading my audiobook, I had a poignant moment where I say, as a teenager, you'll cut pieces off of yourself to belong to a group. And I just learned that in Kindle, you can make picture quotes out of a book, which was really great. So I made a picture quote out of this, shared it in my Telegram, and I said, I never ever thought this would become a literal thing. This is where we are, where people are physically cutting pieces of themselves off to belong in a group. And it's heartbreaking, and you can't save everybody. You really can't. And that's so important, because that's where the overwhelm comes in. It's like, oh my gosh, who do I talk to? Who's my audience? How do I spread this? Who do I help? Where do I go? I have to do it all. And you can't do it all. You just can't, so there's a friend of mine who is a very wise person. He's on YouTube as well. Mondays and Fridays, I think it was about 2 years ago, he came up with this idea of the light worker relay race. So you're holding the baton and you're going for it, but you get tired, you hand it to someone else and you rest.
Absolutely.
Somebody else will do it when you're not doing it. And to just have that faith that if you feel you need to rest or not to speak, that you have to get your energy levels back up so that you can go and do it again,
It's like this tapestry of light that we constantly kind of, the light is popping up here, then it's popping up there, but we're all connected and we're all spreading this blanket around the earth. And as you say, sometimes we're feeling strong, like, you can conquer the world, and, you've got a lot of energy, and other times you just feel drained and you need to take care of yourself a little, But I can't wait for your audiobook. I think that's going to be amazing.
Well, thank you. What's really interesting is I'm finishing things right now. I'm finishing off stuff, and I'm feeling we are in a liminal time where starting something new is like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? How can I best be of service? Where am I supposed to go? And I have a lot of clients at the moment, and a lot of people saying to me, what's my life purpose and what am I supposed to be doing? And I'm like, maybe what you're supposed to be doing is letting go of everything, all your expectations, all of the things that you think you believe in, so that you can change your frequency, because only when you get to a higher frequency can you see the landscape of that frequency. And I've had occasions actually where I've told clients the job that you're going to be doing in 5 years' time doesn't exist yet. So you could conceive of it now. So just do the best you can with what you know and keep healing and be a good person, replenish your energy, that kind of thing.
It's funny when you surrender and you kind of turn inwards a little, and you work on yourself, and you're like, but I need to know, what's my next mission? What is my next step? And then suddenly you just surrender and you kind of really spend time working on yourself, and suddenly, the opportunity appears, or the direction, or the whatever you're meant to do next becomes clear. So you just can't force things. They will happen naturally when you are ready.
No, and you don't ever know why. I mean, let's say your TikTok, you were on there for 6 weeks, but you might have saved one person's life that you will never know. You will never know if you did or not. So if you were anybody else, you go, oh my gosh, that was a waste of time. Why the heck did I even do that? What's the point? And all the effort and all the pain, and it was just not worth it. But if you were to discover, let's say at your life review after you die and you're sitting there with God, and God says, oh, and do you remember that time you did the TikTok thing? Yeah, well, you saved this many lives.
Exactly. We all want a big impact, or maybe not all, but I don't like to. Traditionally, I haven't liked playing small. So you want a big impact, you want a big following, but if you make such a major impact in one person's life, as you say, isn't that just so
but you
worth
don't know
it?
who that person was. Maybe that one person then goes and saves 3 more lives, or
Exactly.
I'll tell you, I had a very interesting text from a friend about 4 months ago, and she said, you shared on Facebook a post from an astrologer, and that day I was going to go and kill myself, but I saw your post that you had shared and I changed my mind. You know, so needless to say, I hopped in the
Goosebumps.
car and I was straight down there. What the hell's going on? And what can I do? But they say that sometimes just smiling on the street at a stranger can
Mm,
save their life too. So this is what it
mm,
is. It's like, you know, I know what everyone says about Disney, but the Disney princess who walks and leaves the trail of sparkle dust behind them, you know,
mm,
and all the animals following in their wake and all the beauty. If you leave that trail behind you, then someone's going to feel it and it's going to change something about their day. And I think, you know,
mm,
that's what we have to do. It's not about getting angry and fighting your corner and trying to convince somebody of something,
mm,
because you know we're all adults and we all have to make up our own minds. So again, you've got the personality, you've got the character. Sometimes it's a hard nut to crack, you're just not going to get in there, but you can talk to the higher self, or you can just, you know, sit and emanate this frequency and hold a
mm.
space for all the other people that maybe you've never met to come up and meet you there.
Yeah. But the more self-aware you become, you can see how you're reacting and kind of look at it from a neutral point of view and say, "Oh, you know, I way overreacted in that situation," or I could have not let it affect me. I could have been more neutral, and you know, so you become more self-aware as well. And I've actually experimented with what you just talked about, being out on the street, you know, and then maybe you are having a really bad day. Like the one day, I don't know, my car went in for a service, and the Uber didn't turn up, and I was just like everything was going wrong. But I decided, you know, I'm gonna just do the opposite of what I'm feeling. I'm just gonna be just emit a beautiful energy. I'm going to smile at people. I'm going to, you know, send them some light. You know, whether it's talking about to the Uber driver, asking about his family, what he's doing here, making him feel good, and you know, the homeless person on the street that you would normally just like avoid and scurry along. You actually look at them in their eyes, smile, just emit light to them,
Yeah.
and it was a visible difference, you know, that I saw in just affecting the people. The lady at the till, making her smile, making her laugh, you know, just for a moment, that joy and that sharing that moment, making eye contact. It's yeah, those are things we all can do, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's when you're saying about the Uber driver and getting stressed. I booked in to my gym this morning to do yoga, and the schools are back. So in Ireland, when schools go back, traffic is terrible in the morning. And so I was racing across traffic and I was getting stressed, and I had to phone the gym and I said, I'm not going to make it on time. Can I walk into the class late? And they're like, no, they closed the door at 3 minutes after. So I said, okay, well, I'm not going to make it. So I went in and I said it to him and I said, I decided not to get stressed about this, because by the time I got to the gym, then I had to find a parking space. So he says, well, if the time doesn't suit you, then I'm going to look into changing the time, because it's not going to suit a lot of people. Because I said, yeah, well, I said, you know, summertime, there's no rush hour traffic, and now we're back at school. So
Mm.
things can happen when you're peaceful about it, instead of getting, oh, I missed this by, why did you close the door and all of this? You know, so no, I'm not going to get stressed out, particularly about yoga, which is not about getting stressed. You know, I thought I
I've had a
just don't
couple
need
of
the
those
stress.
rushing into yoga and being in the class all stressed because you've just raced across town. And
In
it's like,
traffic to get there.
you,
It's like, what's
you
the point?
defeated the point. Yeah,
So
gosh.
yeah, but we have a choice. You could choose to be angry when you're stuck in traffic, and or you can find an interesting podcast to listen to, or put on some classical music, or just, you know, solfeggio is good for relaxing.
Mm,
I don't know, is it 548, whatever that particular, and the 500s is what I'm listening to at the moment. It's very peaceful, very expansive.
mm, mm. I'm actually on a mission on finding like a beautiful playlist, but not necessarily one that you just play at night or when you're in meditation, but just something you can play in the house. We all know, you know, the frequency of music has been interfered with, but just finding like a beautiful different playlist that you know they are of the right frequency. You know, I think that would be awesome. And you can actually find them on maybe like Apple Music or something that's easy to access
Well, I have
as
a
well.
clearing one on Spotify that people follow. It's clearing music.
Mm,
So you don't even have to listen to it. You can play it really loud in the kitchen. Go
mm,
upstairs and have your shower or whatever, come back down, and then the whole kitchen is like radiating this energy.
I love that.
So
Please
it's
send
really
us the
good.
details.
So yeah, well, just look me up on Spotify. But what it is, like, if you're going to work, or you work I work for myself. I have a little room, so I would put the music on in the room, because there are people all around me all the time. I can go out and get my coffee or my Coke or whatever I want, and I come back and the room is just like ready for me. Sound, I think we need to play more with sound. I really
I think so
do.
too.
I use sound in my healing. In the book that I'm recording, I've actually used a chime to denote the end of an exercise, which I've never done before. But I think when we realize that we are frequency, and that frequency is sound, and what is the sound that you're bringing into the room? Is it crusty and squeaky and grindy, or is it, light and bright and open? And really, if that's what we work on, and then we can sit with angry people, and sit with grieving people, and sit with happy people, and allowing people to be happy. This is one of the paradigms that's always got to me, like, you're not allowed to be happy, because if you're happy, you don't understand what it's like to be human, or people are going to get pissed off with you because you're happy. So why? It's not going to stop me being happy. So all these horrible, terrible things are happening in the world. You shouldn't be happy. So, well, I'm actually having a good day. I'm going to radiate that frequency outwards, and maybe it'll affect somebody else. So,
Yeah. I think, I've often get that question in the comments of videos, but what can I do? What can I do to raise my frequency? And what can I do to be part of this mission? And, that's something we can all do, be that lighthouse. But to be the lighthouse, you've got to work on your light. You've got to exercise that muscle, use sound in your space, use inter, you know, take time to reflect, take time to meditate, take time to allow that divine light to come into you and to radiate out of you, and visualize it. It doesn't just happen. Okay, give me the light. Okay, I've got it.
no, it doesn't
Switch
just
on the
happen.
torch.
Well, that's why I run my Raise Your Vibration boot camp twice a year. I actually did one this summer as well, because you have to actively have a daily spiritual practice. It's not
Isn't
a
that coming up
prayer.
now? I saw
Yeah, it's
your.
actually this week.
Oh, wow.
So
Can people still sign up?
they can sign up. They can sign up right up till the weekend. But I mean, I'm not holding it today. I do it all the time. I have so much stuff about
Yeah.
it. If people just know, meditating is not this. This is cleaning up your energy field, removing bits of frequency from you that you picked up from outside of you, and actively becoming responsible for what you're putting into you, and what, and cleaning up so that you rise
Purifying
up.
that vessel and,
Exactly. But it gives, giving people tasks and things to do actively, to do that, so that you feel, okay, I've done that now. It's like me, I went to the gym, I went. Even though I missed the yoga class, I went anyway. It's like, but I do it all the time, every day, because it's who I am. It's a vocation. And I know for some people it's not a vocation. They do other things, so they need a bit of guidance. But yeah, I'm thinking what I might need to do is make another book out of this, so that people can come to that. But yeah,
Yeah.
there is. But I mean, just sitting in silence and seeing yourself emptying all of the things out, and you'll see what keeps coming back. Usually a thought, could be a difficult thought. Write it down. There it is. I'm looking at you. I see you. You're out of my head now, and now I'm going to empty. And usually when you do that, then the difficult thought, kind of urgency and importance, it kind of goes away. So that when you come back to it, it's like, yeah, okay, but I can deal with that. Or, there's nothing I can do about that. And then you move on from it. So
That's a
yeah,
beautiful exercise, something that everyone can do. Easy.
absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting, because we talk about the telepathy between people. Usually those difficult thoughts aren't even yours. It could be something that someone else is dealing with, that they just throw it at you, and you pick it up because you're open to them. Or, or it could just be that they want you to do something, and they just keep throwing it at you. Or, you say, okay, no, I've seen it, out of my energy field now, clean the field, see, golden light around me. I'm good. And I can do what I choose to do. So there's all kinds of things you can do.
Yeah. Now, you obviously have explored the healing of the inner child, and as you said, the inner teenager quite a bit. But would you say, it can be like a one-time exercise? Is it something that's ongoing? Because I feel like so much of our programming, it does come out of childhood wounds. Not even things if we look back, oh, that wasn't such a major event, but when you were a child, it was major for you because you were small and it felt intense, and it may not look that severe looking back at it now, but at that time, it left an imprint that is still playing itself out today. So would you say that's an ongoing process for most people?
It's interesting because when I'm doing the inner teenager work, I open the chapter of the book and it says, bring your inner child with you into this. Because sometimes the amplification of a wound is because the wound happened as a child. And so you're dealing with it now in the moment, but when you track it right back to the origin, it's a child. And then again with the 20-year-old, where you would experience, let's say, your first betrayal, violation of your boundaries, or a bereavement, something like that. Again, it goes back to the teenager, it goes back to the inner child. So I say bring all of the aspects of you into everything that you do. Excuse me, as my throat gets like this when there's energy clearing that's needed. Because I use the example, 2 5-year-olds on a little bike thing, and they both fall off, and one of them gets back up on and is gone because he's not traumatized and everything's fine, but one of them is still there crying because for whatever his soul blueprint, whatever his experiences, his lessons, his learning, that was deeply traumatic for him, the idea that he's not in control of the world anymore. And whereas maybe he was Genghis Khan in a past life, and now he's realizing he's having a different experience now. And so just like you say, the same incident can wound people at different levels depending on their makeup. But that's the beauty of us. I mean, when you're being patient and tolerant with everybody, at the core of it is the realization that if we're all a shard of God, or the consciousness of God, experiencing life, if we were all the same, it'd be boring for him, the boring dream. But he wants to experience it in different ways across many different personalities, many different, so everybody has to do it in their own way because that's what they're here for. And so the tell, if they're not getting it, maybe they're not meant to get it. It could take 300 years for somebody to become a mature adult, and some of us are mature adults when we're 6.
Exactly.
How do you know the child that just has this natural poise and a sensibility of responsibility at a very early age, because they're an old soul.
Yeah. It's just like today, sometimes we feel like if somebody's older than you, you should kind of respect them and they know more than you if they're like 20 years older or 30 years older than you. But you could be a much older soul than they are. So,
well, I think respecting them, absolutely, but not necessarily that we know more. I mean, I did this in a room full of people one time and they were shocked. And I said, don't look at people's chronological age. It was like my daughter now, she's nearly 15. It was as if she just was born able to play the piano. She just looks at her fingers, looks at the keys, figures something out in her head, and that's it. And whereas another guy in her class is practicing 3-4 hours a day on the piano, that still isn't as good as her, but it's not his fault. He really wants it this lifetime, then he's going to put the work in his next lifetime. He'll be the same as Maya.
she did that in maybe a previous lifetime. She put in the 4
maybe
hours a
she was
day.
a composer. Maybe, it's like my children, some of them are quite accomplished. They know who they are. So I've been able to facilitate that space for them. There's a lot of children born in who have soul missions now, who are in families that are making it harder for them, or they're in families that are making it easier for them. I heard an astrologer say about 4 years ago that anyone that ever incarnated on this planet, in the history of this planet, is here now, which is why we have so many people here now. So with all the loss of life in the last couple of years, it's probably not the case anymore. However, that in itself was a really interesting thing to think about. So we're all learning, we're all growing. And if you think of the consciousness of God is looking for attainment of some kind of wisdom, and all of the aspects of it needs to
Mm.
reach that attainment, then that's the cycle that we're in. It's kind of how I'm beginning to see it. So our inner children are parts of us, and we bring them on with us, so that when I'm here and I don't get an email from Anina in a week, my inner wounded child's not saying she mustn't love me anymore and maybe she doesn't like I'm going, no, because I just don't think that way anymore, because I've embodied that piece. But that has to happen for all of the people in the world in order for God to have that total attainment level to move on to the next stage. And as I was saying this latest philosophy to my husband, and he's like, so what happens then? And I said, I guess it just happens all over again. You know, who knows? Who knows?
Well, they
We're
say
getting rid of it.
once we fully evolved or ascended master, whatever you want to call, we'll be going on to create new worlds, and it will start all over again.
And start all over again.
And it's almost like a giant organic algorithm. It keeps running different programs. If you do that, then that happens, and then that, and then that, and connecting all the dots, and until, okay, we've figured this out. We've run all the algorithms we can, and we figured this thing out called, life and evolution and existing in this realm.
I think that's very helpful. I think that's really helpful, because anybody right now who's feeling overwhelmed, to know that you're not here on your own, and it's not your job to fix everything, and it's your job to become the most attained, wise, good, beneficent version of yourself, because that's going back up to the main consciousness of God, and that's what God wants you to do. So that could take some of the pressure off, maybe. And then when the pressure is off, you have more energy to go out and save and help and do.
And we kind of knew what we signed up for, right? We knew coming into this incarnation, we wanted to be like that because we wanted to learn this lesson, we want to perfect that skill, we want to perfect that kind of way of thinking or feeling, and we kind of designed our own lives. And sometimes you've got to realize that you are strong enough, because you wouldn't have designed this if you weren't strong enough to figure it out.
You see, that's where we disagree. I've been thinking about this too, and I think things have shifted beyond, let's say, anyone around from age 40, 50, 60 at this point might have signed their contracts in spirit world to do work, and not necessarily have been told that this was going to happen and that they were going to be needed to be doing something else. And I think that that's possibly why so many people got so shocked, because through your core of yourself, something didn't feel right, wasn't meant to happen. It's almost like the trajectory of what we'd signed up for was shifted. And I've had a liminal time where I felt like some aspect of me went back up and renegotiated contracts and came back down, and then I was more settled. And I think that possibly during the pandemic, many people did that, to say, okay, I don't understand. These aren't the lessons that I signed up for. This isn't what I expected. It's not what I thought was going to happen. And there was an opportunity to go back up and maybe sit with the solicitors up at God's feet, maybe not necessarily with God himself, and say, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And maybe the people who don't have that knowledge or the peace inside haven't gotten in yet, because, there's a lot of people who, so just say, okay, I want to know. So let me go and renegotiate my contracts and at the soul level and bring me back a sense of peace, so I know what I'm supposed to be doing now. It's interesting, because what's coming up through the collective consciousness at the moment is all this multiverse and the parallel universe, and it's all being shown to us through the media because it's in the collective consciousness at the moment. And, my daughter said, you have to watch the new Spider-Man because that explains the multiverse the best way that I've ever seen anywhere. And I watched it and I'm like, no, it doesn't make any sense to me. And then I watched Loki and I'm going, oh, this whole variant thing is really interesting. That feels like it could be a thing, So we're all kind of putting the jigsaw puzzle together in different shapes, but it does feel like something shifted that was big, that we might not have all have signed up for. See, it didn't bother the children at all.
Explain a bit more.
Well, my kids didn't feel it. They're looking at me going, you're a crazy person. What's going on? Why are the adults so up in arms. And it feels like the children that have
Mm,
come in over the last 20 years were more in alignment with this timeline.
mm, mm, mm,
Honey would call them the builders, I think. Or she said
mm.
Dolores Cannon would have called them the builders, and they came down and they know what they're going to be doing, and they're ignoring the things that are making other people upset, and
Yeah,
they're
I
just
know that's old
yeah,
news. We now focusing on this, you know, that
yeah,
they're already done
exactly.
with that. And
Whereas
we're
we're
like,
still
no,
looking
but
at
what do
this
you mean?
going, what the heck is going on? Who am I? What's supposed to, so, at some level, yes, we thy will be done, which is ultimately what we go with. So it's interesting because some people that I follow on YouTube have the most eloquent and detailed explanations for all the energies, and they can see things, but then they contradict each other, and then there's too much story. And I'm going, okay, I'm pulling out of that because it's just too much for my brain, and come back down to the heart and go, right, that's where you start. It really has to
Mm,
be there.
mm. But I really feel that also that we need to stop complicating it so much and using all this complicated language and concepts to explain things. And I've heard it from a few people now that they've actually, it's almost like spirit took away some of their vocabulary because they didn't want them to, we put on this act of sounding very intellectual and using fancy words and highly intellectual concepts. But actually, when you boil it down, it's quite simple when you think more through your heart. The concepts are
Yeah.
simple, and we need to, get back to that simple form of communication. I did see a post that you shared about that astrologist, and I do find it, with her as well. You mentioned that you resonated and respected her so much, but now you just don't resonate anymore. And I feel it's a case of making things so overly complex and intellectual that it takes it almost away from the heart
Yeah.
into just completely into the head, and you lose the essence of it because we can't just think with our intellect now. We've got to integrate the two.
Absolutely. It's also like there was a whole thing that, when you're drawn into different subjects at different times to just learn them. So this was
Mm,
maybe 5 years ago. I was reading a lot of material that was coming actually mostly from Australia for some reason about unifying the chakras. And this is the light workers. And I think it might have originated from Australia, but to say that we only need one chakra and we need to pull out of all of our chakras and just be one big chakra. And I thought that's a bit strange because for me, the chakras are power centers, and I only really work with 3 or 4 of them myself. So, but in Indian mythology, I would call it mythology. In Indian texts, there, you've got little chakras on each fingertip, and and then when you look at Chinese medicine, and you have your whole body mapped on your hand and your face and your foot, and it's incredible how bodies are made. So now it's like everybody knew. Yes, it's only one chakra. Yes, it's 12 chakras. Yes, it's 17 chakras. And now that this whole discussion about the light body and how many power centers we are now, and there's all the conflicts, it's like, no, I'm just going to step back because it just has to be from the heart.
mm,
It really, really has to be from the heart. We bring our full healed presence into our bodies. And we don't need to know how many chakras we have. We really don't. What we
mm,
need to know is that our inner child is healed, our inner teenager is healed, our inner wounded adult is healed. And then if someone's going to act out in front of us, we're not going to be triggered. And if we are triggered, that's the work we need to do.
mm,
And that we bring all of the aspects of ourselves with us on wherever we go, that we can have fun without being guilty about it. We can be joyful, even if there's something going on in the world, because there's always going to be something going on from the world. We don't need to know all the answers, just like you don't need to know how many lives you saved on TikTok. You just know that you did what you were called to do.
mm,
And if the core reason why we're here is shifted, then we have to go with that because we're not in charge of anything at all. We're just, and to make life as joyful as we can for ourselves, and to just emanate that peace, really.
absolutely. And control what we can control, instead of trying to control what we can't and getting lost in all the intellectual information and actually
Exactly,
just
exactly. And at
feel
the end
so
of the
accomplished
day,
because we now
it
understand the
crosses, yeah,
1700 chakras in the body.
it
Like now
drains your
what?
energy, doesn't it? And it wants to
Yeah.
make you feel like you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Whereas in your soul, you have everything you need. we don't need to label anything. We don't need to hand any power to anybody. You know, we could just be the wisest version of ourselves, and that's the world that we navigate. So
Yeah, and that brings your power back to you, you know, because we've all lost our power over time. And once you claim back your power, that's the beginning of a whole new
exactly.
chapter.
And forgiving ourselves. I mean, I did a charity walk with my two eldest daughters and discovered later that the NGO that I was raising money for had taken the money and did all bad things. And, you know, I could kick myself over it. And I said, well, I didn't know at the time. Now I'll be more discerning. So you take the learning, and next time when they're looking for money, you go, okay, there's a charity in Morocco of people on the ground that are actually Moroccan, and the money's going to go straight to the people on the ground. So
Yeah,
great. That's the
you
one
know
I
what
choose.
questions to ask so that it doesn't
Yes,
happen again.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, we're living in an exciting time, so we've got to, as you say, not focus too much on everything, understanding everything that's
Oh,
going on as well with this military operation. Do what we can within ourselves to evolve ourselves and to emit that light. And that's what's going to move the needle. And
I think
such
so.
important work.
But educating ourselves too, you know, the science of marketing, of psychology, having the discussions as rational, logical adults where we know we don't know everything, and allow ourselves to listen to other people. You know, I was listening to Jordan Peterson this morning, and I'm not crazy about him, but he has some very interesting viewpoints, and something that he said really struck me, that most people figure out what they think about something when they talk about it.
Hmm.
And that the second most way to figure out what you think about something is to listen to somebody who has an opposing view. So when you listen to the opposing view and it stimulates you to go deeper, then you change possibly how you think, or you grow in some way. And if we're not allowed to talk, or we're not allowed to have opposing views, then we're not going to grow. And I think that's the key of what's going on, is the growth is being stunted because the discussions are not being allowed to be had.
Yeah.
Whereas nobody is going to tell you what you can and can't do in your own backyard. And so we have the discussions. So
Absolutely.
maybe on our YouTube channels, we should find people who we disagree with and have them on and have conversations with them. What do you
Absolutely. I mean,
think?
yeah, that stimulates conversation, you know, different viewpoints. It makes you think.
As long as they're adults, I'm up for it. They're not going to have temper tantrums as your 3-year-old not getting your own way, you know, because I'm going to do my best not to do that.
It's
So,
part of having an open mind and an open heart, you know. Once you close that down and say, well, I know everything and I'm not going to entertain any other viewpoint, well, then, you know, you stop evolving.
yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Mm.
Well, look, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
having
that's
me
been
on your
super
show, and for being on my show. We're going to share.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. It was great to connect again. Where can people find you? I'll
Oh,
link your
everything's
everywhere.
on my website. It's
Okay.
abby-win.com, or hyphen ABBY hyphen WYNNE.com. Where can people find you, Anina?
I have a
On
website.
TikTok?
No, I just no. There's another. I did create another profile, but honestly, that's kind of for a specific audience. So, I've got a website called vividearth.org. It's not very active at this stage, but it's all just, you know, I don't offer any services on there per se, but it's just a platform and a tool to connect us. And then channel on YouTube, Telegram.
YouTube, yeah.
Telegram shares daily updates, so that's quite a useful tool if you do want to know what's going on in the world and get some inspiration at the same time. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Rumble, but you know, we're everywhere, but we just collectively on this mission to shift the planet into a new age, the golden age. That's the
Golden
mission.
age. Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Abby. Keep doing the wonderful work that you do. Guys, check out her books. They are amazing. And I can't wait for the audio book, because these days I kind of prefer audio books over physical books. I don't know why.
Well,
It's
my
easy.
audiobook has a bonus because in the actual physical book, you just read the exercise, but in the audiobook, you're doing it with me and there's healing coming through in my voice. I figure the more healing I can give to the world right now, the better. So it's I'm just doing it. Just do it.
Amazing. When will that be out?
Oh, well, I thought I could record the whole thing in a week and I can't because it's very intense. So it'll be out when it's out and I'll just shout to the hills. I'll tell everybody when it's out. So,
Yeah, we'll keep a lookout for her channel. I'm sure she will talk about it when it's done.
yes, definitely. Definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abby.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. We'll see you soon.